Good morning, everybody. Today's date is Friday, May 31st. This is Jeffrey Harris with the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. I'm speaking with the one and only Shane Helms. He is the Hurricane. You better watch out because he is coming through. Just saw him at Starrcast last weekend. I'm sorry we've been off for a couple weeks, but we had Starrcast and Double or Nothing last weekend, but now we're back this week. We have this great interview today. Shane Helms, thank you for speaking with us today. Really appreciate it, and it's a great honor and pleasure.
Oh, no problem, man. Glad to do it.
So, how did you get to enjoy Starrcast last weekend?
I had a blast. You know, those things, I get to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while. You know, of course, I'm one of those guys I always enjoyed the fan interaction, of course, but, you know, seeing some of the guys in the business that have been my friends for a long time that I haven't physically laid eyes on in a while, you know, that's always an added bonus and those type of things.
I just think it's neat because that convention, it's sort of like getting your own sort of Comic-Con, but with wrestling, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Now, great. So, Shane, you are now working with WWE as a producer, so I'm very curious how this whole thing started and how your new role with the company came about.
Well, I mean, I did the producer thing with TNA, you know, a few years ago, and that went extremely well, and, you know, word of mouth travels pretty well in this business. And so, you know, I guess that kind of got around, and then while I was doing my Ring of Honor stint, you know, that was never with a contract. I never worked with a contractor. It was always, I would just talk to, you know, the bookers, and we'd settle on some dates and do some things. And while that was happening, you know, I got invited to do a tryout as a coach down at the Performance Center. And that went extremely well. And down there, you know, I let them know, and they knew right away, Dave B and WWE, that my long-term goal was to be a producer. That was something I always had a, you know, an interest in and a fascination for. So, the same week that the Performance Center reached out to me and offered me a permanent position down there was the same week I got a call from Triple H about, you know, going to the main roster to do the producing thing there. So, it was just me staying in the game. You know, I love all the different aspects of the business. So, well, at least I'm fascinated. I can't say I love them all, but I'm fascinated about all the different aspects of the business. And, you know, I stayed in the game and never took myself out.
Now, as a producer, can you be a little more specific and describe what your role is, what roster and what group you get to work with, and what exactly a producer does? Because I've always been curious, are you like laying out the matches? Are you helping book the matches at live events at TV? I'm curious how it works.
I mean, the short of it is that we're the middleman between creative and the talent. And as far as for, you know, what we do specifically, you know, that just varies with the guys. Some guys, you know, there's a bit of a trainer role in it as well. There's certain guys you can help out, you know, in techniques, spots, you know, psychological ideas, but it just really varies, you know. And I don't work with any specific talent. You know, they kind of spread us out and let us work with you know, a bunch of different people. Right now, I'm on both shows, both brands, Raw and Smackdown. But I believe that's going to change once Smackdown moves to Friday night.
Now, I'm just curious, in terms of coaching and training, do you ever see guys pick up bad habits that you want to try to help work with them on in terms of wrestling?
All the time. Yeah, there's a lot of little bad habits. You know, and that's just like a trickle-down misinformation. You know, a lot of the schools on the indie scene, a lot of schools are ran by people that, you know, weren't really big stars. And so there's just stuff that they can't teach because they don't know. A lot of these schools are awesome at the basics. You know, they're fantastic at the basics. But they're not going to be able to tell you how to get, you know, to a certain level. And they're not going to be able to tell you how to work in front of a big crowd because they never did. And there's a big difference between working in front of a small crowd and working in front of a big crowd. So, you know, there's always these little habits you gotta tend to break guys from. And actually, that was something I did in WWE back in the day. Anytime somebody came up from, then it was OVW or FCW or whatever the developmental territory was, you had to come through the Hurricane at some point. You know what I mean? That was one of the running jokes in the locker room was I got all the guys before they got really good. I would help groom guys like Randy Orton, like Batista, guys like that.
And in one way, AJ Styles, remember?
Yeah, I definitely tried to get. Well, I tried to get AJ hired. I actually got heat for that match. If you want to hear a crazy story, because I let AJ do so much. Because I was already an established character. Of course, AJ was an unknown at the time.
Right.
But I wanted AJ to get hired. I thought AJ was fantastic back then. Truth be told, I didn't think he'd ever. Not that I didn't think, but I mean, I didn't perceive him to be as big of a star as he got. I mean, no one did, other than AJ. But I let him do a lot. I let him do the shooting star and all the brain busters and all this stuff. After the match, I got a little heat for letting him do so much. So me and him actually talked about that recently because he had seen it because WWE posted that match and he'd rewatched it and he goes, "Yeah, you gave me so much." So it's just it's kind of a circle of life. I really wanted him to get hired, and I believe they actually did offer him something at the time, but it wasn't something he wanted to do. In terms of moving, you don't want to move to Cincinnati away from his family. And but it's crazy. I mean, that's just how crazy the business is. Because now I get to agent some of his matches, and I'm working with him in a different capacity.
But how crazy is that? Looking back, you guys had this match, man, over 17 years ago, on Jacked, and AJ kind of took the long way around, but now he's one of the top stars in the world. Did you ever imagine that would happen for him?
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, I knew there was something special there. I liked AJ as a person and as a talent. And I didn't know him like all that well. I mean, WCW, I'm sure we talked and had some conversations. And we were friendly, but I didn't know him super well. But what I knew of him, I liked and respected. And I respected his work for sure.
Would you say right now he's one of the best in-ring performers in the world?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Very, very nice. Now, last weekend during Starrcast, I got to ask you, so now we have this new promotion, AEW, they had their show. I mean, did you get a chance to watch that show at all, and were you keeping an eye on things?
I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'd actually had some plans to watch it. I mean, I was going to, I've always stayed, on top of the wrestling thing. I've always been one of those guys, I've always watched everything, so just like I stay in touch with Ring of Honor, and I stay in touch with what Impact's doing, and New Japan. I was planning on watching it, but I went down to the restaurant, and as I mentioned earlier, a couple of my friends were down there, and I ended up, having dinner, which turned into cocktails, and next thing you know, I didn't make it back up to my room till a little bit later, but I caught a lot of the highlights. There was a few, not a few, but I watched the Cody and Dustin match in its entirety. So I got a lot of friends there, so it would be hard for me to not watch it.
Now, a lot of fans are sort of excited about the idea of a new promotion coming up and possibly having competition with WWE again. Do you feel this is good and this could be a good thing for the business, just to have another place for the boys to go, the men and women, and also just to possibly have someone to keep WWE on their toes?
Yeah, I mean, I think competition is always good. I mean, historically, that's when WWE really put out its best product ever, was during that Monday Night War. So, that might be the best case scenario. You might get the best WWE that you've ever seen. So, I don't think competition is bad at all. Financially, there won't be competition for a long, long time. It's a startup company, and they got a lot of, boxes they got to check. But, they have a tremendous roster. They got a lot of good, ideas behind them. So I think the future is going to be pretty bright, pretty crazy for the industry for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Now, if we can go back about, man, I can't believe it's been over 17 years since the debut of the Hurricane. Tell me about the development of the Hurricane Helms character and gimmick and how that came about and whose idea was Hurricane?
I had become Hurricane Helms because they didn't want me to use the Shane. They didn't want me to use my middle name is Shane. My full name's Gregory Shane Helms, and so they didn't want me to. They wanted me to be Gregory Helms. They wanted me to be Gregory Hollywood Helms, and I asked them could I come up with something different, and they said sure. They were WWE has always been very talk friendly with creative, especially. I've never had any problems with it in that regard. So I was Hurricane Helms for a short while we were doing the invasion angle. And they liked my talent, but I needed a hook. I knew I needed a hook. They knew I needed a hook. And one of the head writer at the time was Brian Groit, and I think he'd always wanted to do a superhero character. He just never found the right guy. And there I show up. I'm always wearing comic book T-shirts. I got a Green Lantern tattoo on my arm, so I think that was a hint to him that he had the right guy. And it was actually Stephanie McMahon that, came to me with the idea. And, I have a 7-year amateur background, 22 gold medals. So, I was a wrestler. I never really planned on being this gimmick. I never planned on being in 3 count. But when these opportunities were presented to me, I just took them as a challenge. And I made them work. But I remember Stephanie's best line from that was, we'll try this for a couple weeks, a few months at the most. Meaning if it doesn't work, that's all it is, then we'll find something else. And, I said that was in 2001, so you're looking at 18 years later.
I mean, do you think there's just something special and a connection you have with that character? Because all these years later, you're still coming back as the Hurricane at the Royal Rumble. And I mean, I feel like this is an iconic character for you.
I definitely put my heart into it. I knew that there's a part of being a character in pro wrestling, something like a lot of guys struggle with. They can't, if somebody writes a promo for them, they can't do it. They're like, I wouldn't say this. Well, you know what? That's part of the game. That's part of being an actor. You think every actor just shows up on set and goes, I wouldn't say this. I wouldn't necessarily put on a mask and a cape, but the company gave me this opportunity and I made it work. I committed to it 100%. So that was a lot of it, and I've always known when it comes to characters, and even if you're a wrestler character as opposed to a gimmick like the Hurricane, if you don't believe it, the fans aren't going to. And that's why the fans believed in me, because they knew that I believed what I was doing.
Now, what about, getting to work with Kane, finding out you'd be working and teaming with Kane, and you would eventually become tag team champions together?
I only found out about that the night before. I think I was still on Smackdown. It was the night before, or maybe 2 nights before, but it was that weekend before the Monday. I was traveling. I know I was traveling with Matt Hardy, Jeff, maybe Lita was there too. I can't remember the whole group, but they called. And I remember, because I enjoyed traveling with my friends, but then they ran the idea about teaming with Kane, and that just sounded like a really fun thing to do. So there wasn't really a lot of it. No, it was just Matt I was traveling with, because Jeff was actually on Raw. And I think it was actually going to be Jeff that was going to team with Kane, but something happened there, and it led to me and Kane being detected.
Now, in 2003, you got to work with The Rock. You ended up beating The Rock. Is that like your career highlight, that you got to have a one-on-one match with The Rock and you got to beat him?
It's definitely in the conversation of my career highlights for sure. I think that match with me is really what set him on the path to be a superstar. I gave him that rub. I think that's really what gave him the push.
You gave him the push, man.
Yeah, it was just a fan. That was only going to be the one. We had one promo in Toronto, and I've always had a great relationship with the city of Toronto, and it was only going to be that one promo backstage. That's all it was ever going to be. But it went so well, and everybody loved it. And it's one of those things where, when I was done with it, like everybody, all the boys in the locker room were like pat me on the back, told me how great that was, and even Kevin Dunn went out of his way to come and talk to me and tell me how good that went. And Kevin's a super busy guy. He's got a lot more things on his plate to do than that. So really well. And then later on that night in a battle royal, and I forget what the stipulations for the battle royal was, but it was a point when Rock had, eliminated somebody, and then he came over to get me, and I started firing back on him, and you could just feel the crowd get energized by that. And I felt good about that moment, but like I said, I thought that was going to be it. And then, apparently Creative and Vince McMahon just picked up on it, and they decided to roll with it. So, that turned into a couple more promos. A couple more promos turned into a match. It was a very organic thing that happened that wasn't really planned to happen.
Now, eventually you did go to Smackdown. They eventually had you turn heel as Shane Helms, and you had quite a long run with the Cruiserweight title. Now, I'm curious, did you have a preference, like, for the Hurricane character or the heel Shane Helms?
They both had their, advantages and, disadvantages. Being the Hurricane was easy for me. I like being that fun-loving character. But it's hard to get people to love you, so it's a little bit more difficult. The heel, being a badass wrestler is literally the easiest thing to do in the business. Especially all of these. It's funny because in wrestling, the badass wrestlers get all the credit, and that's literally the easiest part of the game. But if you got to go out there and be a character and have layers to yourself, you got to make people laugh and then make them feel sympathy for you. And then make them, on one hand, you're a goofy character, but then when it's time for that comeback, you got to make them believe in you. That's way more difficult than people could ever imagine. So in terms of the ring work, Gregory Helms was easy for me. The Hurricane in the ring work was a little bit more difficult, but I enjoyed both of them, but they were both vastly different characters.
Now, Shane, I'm not trying to get you in trouble or sort of bring back up old grudges, but I've heard you in the past, and it seems you've had some heat with Shawn Michaels. Is that heat still there, or do you still have issues with Shawn Michaels?
No, not at all. Actually, it kind of went away when my son was born about 10 weeks early.
Okay.
And this is the kind of person I am too. I'm not a grudge person.
Okay.
Anyway, so but like my son was born super early, and it was a very terrifying time. And everything, let me just go ahead and say everything worked out beautifully, amazing, no complications whatsoever. But at the time, it was pretty, worrisome moment in my life. And like a fan just tweeted, and for whatever reason, tagged Shawn in the tweet saying, "Did you know about Hurricane's son?" And Shawn said, "I'll pray for him." And so at that moment right there, all the heat was done for me. Even though it was just a tweet and it only took 5 seconds, it just things like that mean more to me than any beef in in pro wrestling. And then but I never saw Shawn again, and never really had a chance to even converse with him, talk to him, or explain to him what I said and when I said it or anything like that until I went down to the Performance Center, whatever my first visit there was. I guess it was whatever. I've been as an agent there now 5 or 6 months, so we're looking at probably 8 or 9 months ago. And Shawn was there, and I just I didn't want to I wasn't going to avoid him or anything like that. I just said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And before I could even get the words out of my mouth, to go in anything, he just immediately started talking to me, and whatever beef was there, we both just kind of threw out the window, and we got a really solid relationship as it stands now. I saw him at Mania. First thing we did, went up, shook hands, hugged, talked about different things going on, and so that beef got squashed pretty quick. And it wasn't even really a beef, it's just a different way of looking at things. So,
I mean, that itself is a tremendous story, because I didn't even know that happened, man. And I'm very happy to hear your son's doing okay. But I didn't even know that, you two worked things out and you had that kind of meeting. So I think that's great, because, life's too short and all that.
Yeah, but actually, I don't think I've even told anybody. I mean, it was something that, we kind of just, it was kept to itself. It was two men talking, and it wasn't something I was going to go on Twitter and talk about.
Definitely.
Just for the sake of getting the attention. And even before, the things I said at that time I meant it. That doesn't mean I'm taking anything back. At that time, I felt that way. Now I feel a different way, and I think as a human being, that's just a part of growing. And, things change, my son, my son's coming into my life just really changed a lot about how I saw different things, and things that used to make me angry just don't make me as angry anymore.
So I guess that sort of answers my questions on how, fatherhood has changed you and how kind of, how you kind of have a different outlook on things in life.
Oh yeah, you got to be responsible now. But when you ain't got kids, you got you don't have to really be accountable to anything. If you go and have some wild, crazy nights, it ain't no big deal. But now my sons are going to Google me one day, and so at least from the time they were born, they could tell that Shane Helms was a good dude. And, I feel like I've always been a good dude. I think, of course, like everybody, we made mistakes and goof up here and there. Everybody does, but for the most part, I feel like I'm a pretty stand-up guy.
What do you think of the WWE Performance Center? And now guys coming up will have this sort of avenue to learn and train this way and go through the Performance Center and NXT.
I mean, it's one of the most amazing. It's the most amazing school there is. Definitely nothing like what I came up doing and how I came up in the business. So it's giving people a huge advantage. And you got coaches down there, which are some of the best in the world. Just speaking of Shawn, there's so many schools out there today, like I was saying earlier, that they're being trained by somebody who, didn't really do that much in the business. Down at the Performance Center, you got Shawn Michaels, you know what I mean? And then you got all these guest coaches that come down, and, and the Performance Center, of course, works very closely with NXT, so you got Triple H in there. And so you got really some of the top minds in the business, and the coaches down there are really really good, and they're from different parts of the world, so you're not just getting an American style or one style. They got guys from the UK that are, like Norman Smiley, super good when you talk about mechanics and technique. He's a guy that can teach you little things that you'll never see with the naked eye watching the show. It's a fantastic place. They got a gym. They got strength and conditioning coaches. They got a medical staff. It's really everything you need to grow as an athlete.
What do you think of the potential of a wrestler and performer like Ricochet?
Oh, I think it's I saw Ricochet, years ago, and immediately, like a lot of people, saw something special in him. I actually had him booked on an Omega show when I was booking and running Omega a couple years ago. He's just a fantastic guy. I think as long as he continues to grow and his skill set has actually improved since he's gotten WWE. I can see that. So I think he'll be around for quite a while.
Now, again, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but, this was a big story this week. So we had former WWE superstar Dean Ambrose, now goes by the name of Jon Moxley, who's also just debuting in AEW. He was on Chris Jericho's podcast. He had some grievances here about the WWE creative process. I'm just curious, have you ever had issues with the WWE creative process? John thinks it's kind of overproduced and you kind of have too many writers and too many complications in the promos. Have you ever had issues with the way creative handles promos and just sort of WWE being overproduced?
I personally never did, but keep in mind, I came up in a different era.
Right.
Where there was a lot more of let's see what the guy can do before we script his promos. But trust me, like recently on a couple live events, I've seen talents go out there and say, okay, go cut a promo. It's not scripted, and it turns out not being good. This whole unscripted promo, that's only good if the talent can actually do it. Not everybody can, and there are talents there that prefer the scripted promos. They prefer it. So it varies on the person. I never needed a scripted promo. You could give me bullet points and I'll get there, and creative figure that on early on. Especially with my Hurricane character, because I was always talking about like some kind of crazy comic book related scenario anyway. They were like, yeah, they would literally tell me just to hurricane it up. And so I would, but not everybody can do that. Some people can, And I think it just varies on the talent. If you can go out there and you can cut a great promo without no help, as long as you hit them bullet points, awesome. But I've seen a bunch of guys that can't do that as well.
That's actually a very interesting point. So back in your heyday, they weren't actually giving you scripted promos back then, is what you're saying.
Like, I mean, I would have like bullet points for
right.
the main part, and I'm sure there was times when it was scripted, and I would look at it and go, "Oh, I could change this up and make it better," but it would still get over the important parts that they wanted to get over. You know, and it's a script. You know, there's a lot of guys get really wrapped up into their little bubble, and you have to understand their world literally does revolve around them. Everybody's does. You know, so but I never really got too wrapped up in my character wouldn't say this. You know, I would just find a way for my character to say it because it's your character. It's not really you. You know, so like you know, like I say, it's always going to go back to it varies on the performer. You can give me any script and I can make it work.
That's a very interesting point, and I imagine. So today you have some guys who can probably do. So some guys you're saying at the live events, they struggle with not getting a script if they don't. So they might not have a. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen them go out there and go, hey, go out there and cut a promo, and it'd be amazing. And I've also seen that, hey, go out there and cut a promo, and it wasn't amazing. You know, so would a script have helped? Who knows? But I know, like, sometimes, you know, and I've seen that too in my whole career, and also too, let me go a couple steps back when it comes to creative differences. And I've been in WCW, TNA, Ring of Honor, WWE. I've been in all the major companies. There's always people complaining about creative, 100% of the time.
Right.
There's always somebody, you know. And I mean, and that's even when things are going great. You know, there's always going to be people that complain about it. There's going to be some people that think it's awesome. Generally, they think it's awesome when things are going their way. You know, there's a weird pattern. You know, when things are going your way, creative is great. When things aren't going the way you think they should, creative sucks. It's weird how that happens.
Was there ever anything else you would have liked to have done with the Hurricane character you didn't get the chance to do?
I would have liked to have had when I came back, when I bought the Hurricane back in 2007 or 8, whatever, when I had the long hair and everything, I would have liked to stayed on Smackdown or Raw with that character. They wanted me to go to ECW because ECW was on the Sci-Fi channel, but the Hurricane wasn't an ECW brand character. I didn't belong there. I didn't fit there. I had a great program with Paul Burchill, which is literally one of my favorite programs that I did with the company overall. But at the same time, I just didn't fit on the ECW. You know, when you think it, even though I am a former hardcore champion of WCW and WWE, let me throw that out there. When you think hardcore wrestling or extreme wrestling, the Hurricane isn't one of the guys that pop in your mind. You understand what I'm saying? And so I would have rather kept that character on SmackDown or Raw. And I wanted to, you know, keep updating it a little bit. But, you know, history or fate just had other things in mind.
I mean, you still look like you're in great shape. You're taking good care of yourself. Do you want to go back out there and have another run with the Hurricane?
Oh, I want to, yeah. My mind wants to. I don't know if my body agrees with me, you know. You know, this producer thing fell in my lap. I still planned on, you know, still doing a lot of indie stuff while I was, you know, up until this came about. So, you know, my in-ring career, if it's indeed over, you know, I don't really have anything to complain about. You know, I was really blessed. You know, I worked with some of the greatest talents that have ever done this. You know, and I can always take pride in the fact that when I got the Hurricane over, that was the most stacked roster that has ever existed in the history of the business. And despite that, I still got this crazy little character over. So, you know, I think I got a lot to be proud of, and I am proud of it. So, if my in-ring career is over, you know, I can accept that. But like I said, you know, every Monday and Tuesday when I'm at that building, that arena, and I see that ring, there's always a part of me that wants to be in there.
Were you happy with the Surprise Rumble appearance? I'm sure a lot of fans dug that.
Oh, yeah, that was, you know, I mean, that reaction, you always hope you're going to get a good reaction, but you never know. And, you know, I went back and watched it, and whether this is arrogant or humble, I don't know, but it was the biggest pop of the night. And I enjoyed it, you know, and the a lot of fun with it, and hats off to Jon for, letting me do that. If Jon said no to that spot, it doesn't happen. That's just how it is. But he was cool with it, and he liked the idea, and, it was fun. So that was 2018, so,
yep.
It was 8 years since I'd been there. And they popped for me like I never left, and that was just awesome.
So who gave you the call? Who called you up and asked you for the Rumble spot?
That was creative. I can't remember exactly who made the call. I want to say it was Mark Carano, but I know that I'd heard my name had been mentioned for previous Rumbles, but I was either with a different company under a contract or injured and couldn't do it. And this that year just. I wasn't with a company. I wasn't injured, and it was perfect timing. And that was one of the better Rumbles too. Even if you take my little, appearance out, that Rumble was really good.
I agree. Now, I'm just curious. Is there last question? Is there any plugs or any things you'd like to share with the fans where they can find you or follow you on social media?
Yeah, at Shane Helms is. All my handles on social media, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So at Shane Helms, I'm pretty active on there. And I try to not make it just about, plugging my stuff or whatever. I try to make it really entertaining and interactive, and not just as one-dimensional as some people do. So I try to have fun on there. I'm pretty easygoing.
Shane, thank you so much for your time, man. First of all, I just want to thank you for this great career and all the great memories you've given us and the fans. And, thank you for what you're continuing to do in the business and working with the next generation of wrestlers. And, thank you. I just really appreciate this time and thanks for everything and what you continue to do, man.
Cool. Thank you guys, man. Just, stay positive. Wrestling's at a really fun stage right now. So everybody stay positive.
I agree, and thank you for your time, Shane, and you've been listening to the 411 Wrestling Podcast. Thank you.